Hello, and welcome to the Hot Corner Podcast, powered by Easton. And now to our hosts, Brittany Heil and Matt Williams.
Welcome to the Hot Corner Podcast, where we'll be discussing the ins and outs of the fast pitch and baseball community. I'm your host, Brittany Heil.
And I'm your co-host, Matt Williams.
Gosh, this episode we have two of the greatest of the best position. We may be a little biased. That is the catcher position, but two of the best. And one is Chelsea Goodacre. She currently plays for the USSSA Pride and over in Japan. She previously coached and played at the University of Arizona. She's involved in youth clinics, catching and hitting, and most importantly, she was the Rawlings Gold Glove winner in 2017.
And as if that's not enough, we also have Mike Macfarlane as a guest on this week's episode. And Mike Macfarlane played Major League Baseball as a catcher for 13 years, 11 of which were for the Royals. So for us here in Kansas City, that's always fun. He, after he got done playing, he has been involved in the game for a long time. He co-founded a baseball softball club. He's coached his kids and other competitive teams in baseball and also in softball. And he's currently a softball coach. So we are super excited to talk catching with two people that have done it at the absolute highest levels, and it's going to be good. So get your notebook out, get your thumbs ready, however you take some notes, because we got some good stuff coming for you.
Here we go. Hi, Chelsea and Mike. Welcome to the Hot Corner Podcast. Before we get started, we just want to check in with you two and see how you're doing during this stay-at-home order. Mike, how are you doing?
Doing okay, going a little stir crazy. I have my in-laws living with me, and my son is working from home, so there's nowhere really to hide in the house. So I've cleaned and moved things around in the garage at least 4 times, and actually look forward to mowing the lawn. And other than that, trying to stay in as good a shape as possible without snacking myself to death.
I was about to say, how's your yard looking these days?
Yeah, yard's looking good. I've never seen so many people at Suburban, and everybody's lawn looks perfect. So,
oh, that's great. Chelsea, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. On the same note, doing a lot of cleaning, and I've been working out a lot more than normal just because I'm at home a lot, and trying to pick up new habits that I wouldn't normally have time for, like stretching, taking care of my body a little bit more, but just waiting for the day to get back outside.
I know, too. And what's so great about the stay-at-home order, though, is we are able to tap into new things that we may not have stopped to do while we were, the day-to-day craziness happening. Well, here we are, 4 professional catchers, so it's going to be hard for us not to be biased to this position as we start talking. Thought we'd touch on, first what's it mean for us to be a catcher. So what's it mean for you to be a catcher?
That's kind of a loaded question. There's so many different things that it means, but I look back at kind of my career as a catcher and kind of where I'm at now, and it honestly has kind of shaped me to who I am and what I stand for and just what I do and how I carry myself. Kind of like the leadership and the communication skills that it's given me has been, it's taken me through school, post-school coaching, all of it. So being a catcher, I think, was probably one of the best decisions in my playing career that I could have made. I made it late in the game, and I never looked back, and I've loved it ever since. So it's been one of the best decisions I've made.
We would agree. Mike?
Well, exactly what Chelsea said. The difference was when I was a kid, my dad asked me if I wanted to touch the ball some of the time or all of the time, and a great answer was all of the time. And he said, well, get behind the plate. So I started as a catcher and wasn't necessarily athletic enough to play any of the other skill positions up the middle. But like Chelsea said, just formulating the intangibles that we like to call them as a catcher, the leadership qualities, the nurturing aspect of nurturing your pitchers, to being the team leader on the field, the manager on the field. All of those things just evolve through the course of repetition in the games. And, there's pretty good reason why the majority of the managers in the major leagues are catchers, because, you have to know every aspect of the game. And that's what I really found appealing going up through high school, then college, and then professionally, just that aspect of being able to take charge and having the respect of the other players on the field, from the beating that you take to how you handle tough situations to keeping everybody under control. As catchers, we've been told since day one that defense is priority one. Your pride says otherwise, but it is true at the elite levels that monitoring, keeping the game on a flowing and moving and calming everything down when it's a snowball fight out there. That's one of the things that you try and get the kids to understand. It's the best position on the field.
Absolutely. And Chelsea, you mentioned the communication piece, and Mike, you also talked about being able to stop the snowball effect. So Chelsea, can you talk a little bit more about the communication piece and I would say how that helped you transition into life after?
Yeah, I would say I didn't start catching till I was in high school. So then I had to kind of learn how to talk to pitchers, learning that pitchers are a little bit different than just talking to your shortstop or your coaches, but also the communication of not just communicating with your teammates, but your coaches. You're kind of a second coach, I would say, not in a way of telling them what to do and whatnot, but you're their eyes on the field. So learning how to communicate that to my coaches, but not feel like I'm ratting out my pitchers or whatnot, kind of keeping the bigger picture in mind was definitely a big learning point for me, was learning how I can talk to my pitcher and keep her on a positive note, but then also say, hey coach, it's time to kind of maybe move on to another pitcher or whatever it may be. But learning those type of skills and how to sometimes have the harder conversations has really helped me outside, knowing that you're not always going to be everybody's best friend. Sometimes you're going to have conversations that you don't want to have, or say things that you may not be the good guy in the room, but it needs to be said, and it's usually for the best. Learning those things, I think it helped me a lot easier once I got into kind of, I don't want to say the real world, because I think softball is the real world, but outside of softball, it's helped a lot in being able to, say the things that need to be said and not worry too much about it.
You're exactly right. And those are crucial conversations you have to have, and they're not easy. So that's great.
Hey,
Matt?
Mike, I think, along those lines with communication and learning to communicate, also, I don't know what it's like to play in the big leagues, but you played in the big leagues for a long time. And in the big leagues, there's some strong personalities. There's some big egos. There's some, very, very talented people that you're in charge of communicating with and managing and trying to get the best out of. So, thinking same question about how being a catcher helped you learn to communicate, but also maybe how did you learn to navigate all the different personalities? Because I'm just imagining, regardless of the level, whether it's youth, high school, college, or pro, parents, coaches, and athletes, we're all dealing with different people. So how did catching help you figure out how to communicate with different people?
Well, like Chelsea said, you have to be part psychologist. You have to know which pitchers, especially at the major league level, which pitchers you have to pat on the back and tell them that they're the greatest thing ever. You're doing fine. They're getting lucky. To the other pitchers that you could jump down their throat a little bit and get the best out of them. So knowing that aspect, you have to be a tremendous listener and understand. And, like you have to do, I would walk straight to the manager after every inning or look over at him and give him the, let's get someone going because we're losing it fast and it's going to turn into a you-know-what show real quick here. Those are the things you have to do because at that level, the major league level, it's about wins and doing what's right for the team. At the youth level, what I found coaching-wise, that I'll let a pitcher stay in a little bit more just so he can learn to either get out of the situation, see how he responds to that situation, and then discuss it with him after. Because who cares about the Hawaiian Hit Fest or whatever that tournament may be. It's still about the kids' development, and allowing them to work themselves out of a tough situation goes a long way. And, you know, that's part of the psychology degree that you have to get, and you do get, from the number of pitchers that you end up catching throughout the course of your career.
Yeah, we know we have certain words for pitchers, don't we? Pitchers. Nicely put, princesses and probably Prince.
Diva, even in baseball, they're divas. Yes.
Yep. So Chelsea, you said you said you started catching at the high school level. What made you want to start catching?
Well, I was a shortstop all through high school, but on my
athlete.
Athlete.
On my travel ball team, we had only one catcher, and she had a very, very bad attitude one game. My dad was our head coach, and then we had a couple other coaches, and they didn't want to play her because she had a bad attitude. They wanted to sit her, and they said, well, Chelsea, can you catch? And I said, I can try. So I threw on the girls' gear. I got out there, and I was actually pretty good at it. I liked being a part of every single pitch, and I decided, well, this is kind of fun. So I started doing both shortstop and catcher. It was really tough at first because I'm a freshman in high school, so all the other catchers have already been catching for years. They understand the pace. It's definitely different than shortstop. And then when I got recruited, the only school I ever wanted to go to was University of Arizona. And when they were interested, he said that he liked me better as a catcher. So I said, all right, I'm a catcher only from now on, and I haven't taken a ground ball since.
Very cool.
Mike's pretty good at knowing those things.
Yeah, he is pretty good.
How was it playing for Coach Kendra?
It was definitely a different experience. It was incredible. My dad, he was a tough coach. He would yell at me all the time, what dads do. And then I got to Arizona, and it was different. He didn't quite, I think he yelled at me once in my 4 years, but it was different how he coached and just learning kind of how he cared for his players and the respect that he demanded on the field. It was definitely a cool experience, and I owe a lot to him. I was really, really happy that I went there and that I worked my butt off to get there. Rewarding.
Yeah. So, and, you know, in the catcher's position, that's a position where you have to put in a lot of time on your own because they don't really ever carve out time during practice for the catchers. So how is it preparing? How do you guys prepare and help your athletes prepare for that position since there is a lot of time outside of practice?
Well, the thing that I do with my catchers, they play catch with each other, even though they play multiple positions, and they know that they need to be there early. If they don't come for early work, then they stay late. Everyone else gets ground balls and fly balls and things, and everyone hits. But the receiving drills, the blocking drills, the footwork drills, those are specific that, again, I think the fact that you're a catcher, that those things need addressing. And you can tell just the definition of a very good baseball or softball team. You can obviously look at the arm on the mound, but also you see how the catcher is behind the plate. You can see the athleticism in the outfield, but the way a catcher works the game, stops the running game, stops the extra bases from wild pitches, those to me define a very good and a very well-coached ball club. So you have to pay attention to them as a coach. And sorry, you got to stay an extra half hour, but that's one of those job descriptions that we talk about, that they have to get their work. They have to get their ground balls, their repetition work in at some point. So my catchers, they know the drills that they need to do, and you can go deal with the 10, 11 other kids and let them do their thing for a little bit at the start, and then bring them back into the fold to get their other reps at different positions.
Yeah, and Chelsea, you were a recipient of the Rawlings Golden Glove in 2017. The NPF 2016, they announced that they were going to be awarding that Gold Glove award, which is one of the highest awards you can receive as an individual in the NPF. And
So what did it take to earn that? Because that season, you did not have one single error, did you?
No. It was, it's funny because you'd think that, well, if there's only, in baseball, it's for every position. So catcher's going to get it. But in softball, I mean, we don't make the ESPN plays very much. It's, and we honestly, a pitcher does well, and that's the pitcher. We don't get the credit that we definitely deserve sometimes. But I think that's sometimes part of the best part about being a catcher is catchers are humble because we have to be.
Yep.
I would say I never once thought like, oh, I'm going to go win that Gold Glove. My biggest thing when I get on the field is my pitchers. That's kind of the biggest thing that I care about on defense is if they're happy, then the rest of our field's going to be happy. And then, it gives us a better chance to win. So I'd say my focus all year long was getting the best that I could out of the pitchers, for one. And again, the communication, because if I had thrown it into the outfield and a shortstop or second baseman didn't cover and it was a perfect throw, that's an error on me. So
which is so unfair.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible. I wish they would change that somehow. But I mean, so I didn't make an error, but then at the same time I had, my teammates were there. I had a shortstop covering the tags. I mean, I threw out, I think it was 68% of runners, which is pretty high for a caught stealing percentage. But I credit a lot of that to my shortstop and second baseman for always being there and putting the tag down, because I'm sure there were some throws that weren't exactly perfect. And then my pitchers, because they communicated with me just as much as I did them, and they wanted me out on that field just as much. And I think by me focusing more on getting the best out of them, it kind of takes the pressure off of making an error. It just helps you play a little bit more free when you invest in others.
So Mike, you just kind of building on that, we're talking about, we're kind of talking around it, in terms of what are some of the defining characteristics that make up the best catchers. So I'm curious if you want to jump in, because again, we're speaking to players, parents, and coaches at every level, but we can learn from the top. And I think it's really valuable to, learn what it takes to win the Rawlings Gold Glove in the NPF or to make it to the highest level in your case, Mike. But, just to put it out there, talent's not enough. The higher you go, the more you're surrounded by talent. So, Mike, what are some of the defining characteristics, the way you see it, that separate the good or the best catchers from the rest?
Well, let's go back to the 68% caught stealing percentage, because
right?
that's equivalent to like a 0.05 ERA for a pitcher.
Right.
So that's just phenomenal. And you're talking about pitches in different locations, and heck, say could be in the dirt, could be that ridiculous stat. But all of those things that Chelsea was talking about, it makes it that much more important to be a good receiver. Everyone thinks you're just back there catching, you're receiving. You have to work hard on it, on especially at 43 feet, the movement of the ball. At 60 feet 6 inches with the umpire behind you, being able to give him the best pitch to help your pitcher out, and working the umpire and talking to the umpire to see if you can get that pitch called a strike. The blocking, the extra bases, all of those things to keep the flow of the game going. That just comes through, yes, I mean, obviously you had the chance to play with some of the best players in the world. It makes your job a little bit easier. But understanding the importance, if you're a young catcher out there, of being able to dictate the pace of the game, helping your pitcher through the game, doing something offensively. There's no other position on the field that on a consistent basis you can dictate the terms of how the game could, or the outcome of the game. And that's part of the thing that from the physical standpoint, yes, the athleticism has to be there. But from the mental standpoint, I think it gets pretty relevant real quick to kids, even at a young age, how important you are back there to every aspect of the game. And it just takes a long time, and splitting the difference between your last at bat and then going out and forgetting about striking out with the bases loaded, and then getting back there to get your pitcher through the next 3 outs. All of those things come into play when it comes to the maturation of a catcher.
And I mean, yeah, you're bringing me back, because I was a head case when it comes to hitting, and I'm sure we can all relate. I mean, in all honesty, like I think catching is the single reason why I was able to play at a decently high level, because it kept my sanity, because I knew to like survive behind the plate, I had to forget about my last at bat. I mean, no offense to outfielders, but if I'm sitting out there twiddling my thumbs, hoping for a fly ball, and I'm 0 for 2 with 2 strikeouts, like I'm gonna be going nuts. Like I'll guarantee you it's turning into an 0 for 4. But because I literally to survive had to focus on defense, I think it actually helped me as a hitter, because it forced me to forget about what just happened in order to be a good catcher.
So what are some challenges both of you have faced? Everything's not sunshine and roses. We're, at the top of the mountain, but what are some challenges and adversity you had to overcome to get to the top?
From a baseball standpoint, the injury factor, and Chelsea will attest to this, Matt, you too, that you're probably never 100% the day you go to spring training or from practices. Your body is never 100%. Learning how to deal with that pain and still being able to perform when the arm is dragging, when your knees and your lower back is killing you, which at the younger age is why it's so important to have multiple catchers or someone that can get you through some pool games to save your number one catcher till bracket play. Those type of things come into it. It's no fun getting the crud beat out of you on a consistent basis with the foul tips, ball in the dirt. That at the youth age they're playing on, mortar fields out there where the ball can go anywhere, and it's a lot of times there's going to be some flesh hits involved. But that's part of, again, the job description, that you're going to have to learn to play in a little bit of pain, where an outfielder can get one fly ball and his legs are feeling great. Well, by the 6th inning, you're a little bit of mush, knowing that that's going to affect your 4th at-bat in a game. The obstacle was learning how to deal with that and still be able to perform and trick yourself, which to me, trick yourself to be a good player still, which to me bears credence to life as well. Overcoming adversity, being able to succeed when you're not at your best or things are going wrong and you're not doing well at the plate, and understanding there's a second part of it, and owning a business, that was part of it as well. So all of those things that I learned to develop throughout the course of being a catcher in my life, it's, references that I can dig into and go back to and say, this is who and what I am now, and this is how I should go at this given problem in life.
Yeah, because you can't take that consistent drop ball in the dirt and throw it back in the dirt at their ankles and shins. You can't do that. Chelsea, what are some challenges that you faced and some adversity that you may have overcome?
Very similar. Coach Kendra always said that the day that you're going to feel 100% is the first day, and that's about it. After that, it's just a little downhill from there. But you have to learn how to play with your A game, your B game, and your C game. So that for sure. And then also, Matt, you mentioned it too, is kind of dealing with going from hitting into defense and kind of dealing with that. But the biggest struggle that I was okay to separate, but then when my defense wasn't there, that's when I had even tougher time. Was that, usually defense, that's my rock. I didn't make any errors, so I feel good about it. I don't have to think about it. Hitting, sometimes you struggle. You're always thinking about hitting. But then when defense, I struggled a little bit, then that was probably one of the biggest things that I had to learn how to figure out how to stop the snowball, like Mike said, in my own brain. Is, my hitting's not well. Well, at least I got my catching with me. But then it's like, okay, I don't have my hitting today. I don't have my defense today. What do I have? And learning how to stop that, as soon as I start to see yellow or red lights, and to get back into the green, the happy zone. That was probably the toughest thing for me to learn, especially later on, is that because I'm very hard on myself, that you can't do that, especially when you're on defense, and being a catcher, the pace of the game will just eat you up. So that was probably one of the hardest things that I had to learn.
Now you play over in Japan as well, right, Chelsea?
Yes, I just started this last year. I had to come back early because of all this
COVID nonsense. So what have you learned playing overseas?
I played in Italy a couple years ago as well. So being over there, it's totally the communication side is so incredibly hard, because sometimes it's hard to communicate and all 9 or 30 of whoever's on the roster all speak English. Whereas when you're overseas, like when I'm in Japan, it's me speaking English and everybody else is speaking Japanese or Italian. So learning how to communicate that way. And then also we have different cultures. So the way I talk to somebody may be completely different than what it would be here in the States. So learning how to kind of respect their culture and kind of adapt to it was definitely hard. The biggest thing for me right now is I went over and, typically and I feel like in both games, baseball and softball, there's certain coverages that happen. It's just kind of a common theme among all teams. There's different plays that you can have, but theirs is completely different. So learning those different things like quick, like game tomorrow, learn it today, was pretty tough. And just kind of being over there and being like talking to a pitcher that speaks completely different language. But I've learned that the Japanese, they're a lot harder on themselves than we are here in the States. So it's nice to kind of get that refresher and to teach them. But one cool thing about my career is when I was young and I started catching, my dad and I would watch the Olympic teams, and we would actually film the Japanese catchers because they were so lively behind the plate. And I would try to model my game after them. And going into Japan just a couple months ago, I saw that their catchers were copying what I was doing. And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. The game just went full circle for me. So it's been quite an experience, and I can't wait to go back.
That's incredible. And that leads, into favorite catching memories for you both. I'm sure you just touched the surface of your favorite memory, Chelsea. Mike, what's your favorite catching memory?
Oh gosh, just the chance to catch Hall of Fame pitchers and some of the best pitchers in the game. Just the difference and how excited you would be to go out on any given day to catch a Roger Clemens or Brett Saberhagen, Kevin Apier, Jeff Montgomery, those guys. It was just, those given days, you find a different gear. And if you are achy and sore a day game after a night game, you tend to get over it pretty quick. So being in that environment on any given night when you can get your pitcher through 7 innings or so when he doesn't have his best stuff, those are some of the memories that you have along those lines. But it's an ever-evolving cycle when it comes to that. But as far as a specific catching memory, probably taking a couple no-hitters into the 8th inning or something like that. And then you question the pitch that you called that broke up the no-hitter. So those are some of the ones that, while it was you end the game with 1 hit and you go, dang it, but that 1 hit you gave up, what if I would have done something different? So I guess those are probably the closest great memories that I've had.
Chelsea, would you say what you touched on was yours, or what's yours?
Yeah, it's hard to pick just one. But like you said, the perfect games or the no-hitters, those are so fun because you start to question, like you said, every pitch that you're calling, like, oh, is this the right pitch? So it's fun. It's probably one of the toughest things to do, and then you're thinking, well, I wonder how the pitcher feels, but kind of keeping everybody calm. But then, I always love throwing runners out. It's probably one of my favorite things, especially the fast ones that everybody says that, oh, they haven't been thrown out this year or whatever. I don't care who's on. I don't care who's there. I'm going to throw them out. But I don't know if I could pick just one, but just kind of everything that embodies being a catcher, I have fallen in love with and love every part of it.
I think, I never, I don't know about you, Brittany, but I never hit that 68% runners thrown out number. But I will say that feeling of you throw somebody out and the whole game stops while they run off the field, like that's one of the feelings that I think I miss the most. And we hadn't really talked about this in the prep call, but both you guys just mentioned it. And so I have to go there because from a catching perspective, and that's pitch calling. You guys just talked about, high pressure, high stakes game, the pressure you felt for pitch calling. It's an interesting conversation. It's depending on the level that we play, but just wanted to hear from from you guys. What are your thoughts on pitch calling and how we should develop and empower young athletes with pitch calling in terms of should the coach call it, should the catcher call it? What are maybe Mike, you can lead us off, and then Chelsea jump in after that. Like, what are your thoughts on pitch calling, especially at the youth levels? Because that's where a lot of our audience is coming from.
I would call pitches up until about age 12. Then I would let the kids, especially if it had been a catcher that had been with me for a while, you have this inning, go ahead and go. And if you have any problems, look over and I'll be your crutch in a pressure situation, because they have to learn, and more importantly, they have to understand why a specific pitch is called in a specific situation. Once they got closer to high school, it was on them. And if it was you're also talking about the pitcher's ability to locate. So you can call for a fastball away, it ends up middle in, and okay. But again, we're catchers. It was our fault, stupid pitch. Which those guys, it's not. It's still, he has the ball in his hand. So from that standpoint, letting them understand how to work a hitter and remember what that hitter did the last at bat on a certain pitch. And in the major leagues nowadays, with the analytics and the hot spots and hot zones and things like that, there still has to be a human element involved. Where, as you know, Matt, a hitter will stand. You notice when a hitter backs off the plate 2 inches. And then all of a sudden, now it kind of takes the game plan out of whack, and you have to be able to freelance and go a different direction, which then gets you blown up with your analytics department. But those are the things that you have to see and notice and understand. Well, this guy's a good fastball hitter. Well, not today. His bat's a little bit slower. I know we can beat him with a fastball. How do I get to that point? And that just starts with their ability to call the pitches on their own at a certain point, and let them start to get a feel and understand what's working with your pitcher, where's the hitter's weaknesses, and let them learn from that.
I completely agree with you. I think especially with the young kids that I work with, I always try to encourage, because I know when you get into tough games, it's a little bit easier for the coach to call. It's hard. It's a big pressure situation. I got thrown into pitch calling in college, and I had no idea what I was doing, and every single game mattered. So instead of studying, I was looking up how to pitch call online and doing all that stuff. But I strongly encourage, even if they're not calling pitches, is to stimulate conversation with their coaches, or try to think in their head, what would I call right now? Okay, I would call a changeup. You look over and they call let's say they call a drop ball. You call the drop ball after the inning. Hey, coach, why the drop ball instead of a changeup? Or to stimulate conversation and to think about what you may call. It not only just puts you more into the game and invested into each pitch, but also gets you kind of thinking about the sequencing and the pitches that are being called. And not only that, I also try to encourage them to think about their at-bats, think about the sequences that they got out on. Like if I struck out on 3 different pitches, I want to know what that sequence was and why was it called, and kind of just to study different at-bats, your own at-bats, your teammates' at-bats, and then also thinking through, trying to think what your coach is thinking as they're calling, if you're not the one calling at that time.
And as we know, coaching the youth, the hardest part is getting them to introduce an off-speed pitch early in the count. They'll get to 2 strikes. Well, here comes a curveball, because that's just what you do with 2 strikes. And getting them to understand mixing the pitcher's pitches in, that's going to take away the hitter's timing, and getting them to understand the effect it has on a batter. Even if their changeup is horrible, it's just a different change of pace off the fastball. Okay, that's pretty cool. Now I understand why it's done. So getting them to understand the science behind it, and taking the hitter's legs away, all of those things that we just love making hitters look stupid with a pitch that we called. That's just part of the fun. It's like, oh, you were looking fastball, that type of stuff. So getting them to understand the whys of why you're throwing an 0-0 curveball or a 2-0 changeup and things like that, when they're 100% set on fastballs the right pitch. Well, not necessarily. And getting them to understand that you need to freelance. You need to trust your pitcher's ability to throw this off-speed pitch in a fastball count, and then watching the light bulb go on, and then usually that's the time they start taking off.
And the fun part is like some of the critical thinking it can develop, because I mean, we've all been there where you have a scouting report that says this guy can't hit a curveball, and you're looking at, you know, your pitcher on the mound in the baseball sense, whatever the softball equivalent is, and you're like, that scouting report's great, but you know, my pitcher's not going to execute that pitch. So what's plan B, right? Like you have to, you know, learn. Both you guys spoke to getting to know your pitching staff and setting them up for success. Well, some of that is like understanding what they have and what they don't, because scouting reports don't mean much if the pitcher can't execute what's on the scouting report.
And now on the flip side, when you were in the batter's box, when you're the one in the batter's box, how did catching and pitch calling benefit you when you're in the batter's box?
Well, for me, I tend to guess. And when I guess, I'm always wrong. So I've had to kind of learn to kind of eliminate more of the thinking, because I have kind of thought more in the process of, oh, I would call it change up right here, or I would do this, and it's completely wrong. So, you know, well, with good pitch calling, it's usually wrong. Because, I mean, if you're predictable, then that's when you can guess and be right. But me personally, I try to cut off my entire brain when I hit to be completely different, only because I freeze up if I start to guess and think about way too many things. I try to just keep it clear. But afterwards is when I'll evaluate and kind of think through the whole sequence post at bat.
That's a great point, because at the high school level, that's really the age where they start going, well, if I was calling a pitch right here, I would throw this pitch. And you don't know what the other catcher's state of mind is, where his development is, or the coach calling pitches, what background he has. But, you know, that's where it gets into the hitting and the thought of an approach and sticking to your plan and not deviating on it, so you're not getting, you know, caught in those situations where I thought a blank was coming on that pitch, and you're going to be wrong an awful lot.
So now we're on the coach's side of this. What led you guys to continue the game coaching?
Well, for me, I wanted to stay at Arizona, so I stayed on staff as a grad assistant and got my master's degree. But I also,
there you go.
Thanks. In the summers, I would coach with my dad while he was still coaching his travel team. Personally, I love to see, as much as I love to get better, and, you know, you make an adjustment and it just feels great. You know, you strike out on an outside pitch, and the next weekend you worked all week, and then the next weekend you hit an outside pitch great, and it's just the best feeling. But I've found that it feels just as good as working with a catcher or hitter, anybody working with kids, and seeing them have those same type of adjustments, and seeing, I don't know, I see myself in them, you know, that they want to get to the highest level. They want to work hard. For me, that's kind of what's kept me in it and keeps me working with kids, is seeing their adjustments and kind of being with them along that process. It's been really rewarding.
For me, it was children. Coaching my son first. Excuse me. One of the biggest lessons I learned as a coach was retiring, the competitive side, dealing with my son and how to handle it, where it was, come on, we got to go work. Let's go hit. Let's go throw. Let's go field. Let's go. And the greatest lesson I learned was, as I was saying, we need to work more, I was sort of pushing him away. I had the blessing of having a second chance with my daughter, where it was completely different, and backed off, and she was the one that was coming, let's go hit, let's go field, let's go do this. The conversations in the car afterwards were nothing about the game, whereas with my son, you know, it was a situation where he was a good player, but everyone else on the team was better. And thinking that hard work, because that's what got me through a lot of things, that I wasn't going to get outworked, I tried to force on him, and it just didn't work. And yes, I had a tremendous time coaching my son, but the lessons and the brunt that he bore, learning to coach him for 8 years and then switching over to my daughter, made her that much better a ball player. And it's just something, if I could relate it to the parents out there, it's still the parent-child relationship that has to be number one. and forcing something on someone when it isn't necessarily the correct move, backing off and letting them come to you to want to work was the lesson that I learned. And now that I'm coaching other parents' kids, have a lot of talks with some of the parents and relay that experience that I had about allowing them to figure it out. It's not about you and your conversation with your coworkers on Monday about how your kid did playing the weekend before. It's about your kid's physical development, psychological development, and just allowing them to develop as a athlete first, and then see where it goes. So I had the benefit of coaching 3 of my children, and the lessons I learned that I was way wrong on with my oldest son, my 2 other children that played benefited greatly from it.
Was it hard on the field, Mike, when you're coaching your son or daughter? If a mental mistake happened, was it hard to not take it out on the kid, but look at it as the player aspect?
Yes and no. I mean, you're a former Major League Baseball player. Everybody knows it's your son. The expectations are different. He didn't grow till he was way late. And as soon as he gets to college, he becomes a beast. But he could have gone and played in college, but quite frankly, he was one of the few on my team that did not go play collegiately, and have had a lot of talks with them, apologizing, and he understands all of that, and said it didn't make an impression on him. But some of the memories we had traveling the country from Florida to California are still some of the best memories I have. And the one regret is, did I force them too much? And I guess you can do that as all parents. And so now the kids that play for me understand that, hey, it's okay. You're not perfect. We'll work on it, but learn from it is more along the lines of the attitude that I'm taking with the kids now. And coaching softball, the girls, those young women are so eager to please. They work their butts off, and when they do something right, their smile lights up the field. Those are the things that I truly enjoy now, coaching a lot more softball than baseball.
Yeah, we talked to the MU softball coach, Larissa Anderson, and she mentioned the same thing for parents when the kids get in the car, say, I enjoyed watching you play today. I think that gets missed a lot because we do see the potential in these kids, and we want them to be the best that they can be. And so, we constantly try and drive that into their head, and, just taking a step back and telling them we enjoyed watching them play, and rewarding them and complimenting them goes a long way, because at the youth, they are still developing mentally and learning about all the different emotions as we all went through. So that's great.
I'm gonna on the kid side of that, because I did grow up having my dad as my coach my whole life. We had a rule that if he had his hat on, he was coach. So I couldn't call him dad on the field or anything like that. If he had his hat on, he was coach. And when the hat came off, he was dad. And I promise you, we had so many of those rides where he would not take off his hat during our ride home. Like sitting in the back seat, like, Coach, can we please be done with this? He's only coach. But as soon as the hat went off, that's when it was kind of the praise, or we kind of didn't even talk about softball anymore. But man, sometimes I wish my coach didn't drive me to practice or to games. But the separation definitely did help. Even still, I'll see him with a hat on, and every once in a while I'll call him coach, because he'll still be – parents are always our coaches no matter where we are in life. But
we had a rule on our team that I had 2 other dads helping me, and no coach was allowed to talk to their kid. You could mention to the other coach, hey, can you go tell my son this and that? But they were not allowed to talk to them during the course of the game, and I think we did that when they started about 11, 12 years old, and it made a world of difference. And just, again, keep the father-son, father-daughter relationship, bringing it home and keeping everything good. You're going to see your kid flourish and not go out there and play scared to death for fear of ramification on the ride home.
Yeah, that's awesome. Really appreciate both you guys opening up and sharing those. There's a lot in there that I think we can all take away from. thinking about it, so we have a lot of parents and coaches listening to this and, and some athletes, but a lot of what we're sharing is going to, funnel down to the athletes through the parents and coaches. So thinking about youth catchers and athletes today, what would be some of the biggest pieces of advice you would share with the athletes themselves? Now, whether that's you're talking to them directly, whether you're, talking to them through a parent or a coach that's listening, what are a couple pieces of big advice that you would give to youth catchers today?
I would say for one is to not only working on like the physical aspects of the game, but I think what separates good catchers from great catchers is their qualities outside of just their physical skills. It's not just about throwing runners out or blocking the ball, but it's also realizing that pitchers need you. And the better that you are for your pitcher, the better your pitcher is going to perform. And you're not always going to get the praise that we definitely deserve. But I would also encourage them to if a pitcher does well that game, give yourself a pat on the back. If a coach doesn't do it for you, you worked hard. But also I would say working on things and enjoying working on them, meaning we have to get there early and catch bullpens, but find something in that bullpen that can make you better instead of just wasting that hour of the bullpen just catching the pitcher. Find something that you can do to get better at, because we are there just as much as pitchers. We are at the field longer than everybody. We work harder than everybody, but to embrace it and enjoy the challenges and look to others to get better. Me personally, when I would play against another catcher, I would look at that other catcher and see if she did anything better than I did. And if she did, I worked on that week so that the next time I faced her, I did whatever that skill was better. I took the best pieces of other catchers' games and I made them my own. So I would encourage other athletes to do that as well, is look to the best, whatever position they play, look to the best position players that they see and take the best parts of their game and make it their own, but to always just embrace every piece of the work, because I would say that it was totally worth it. And I would go back in their shoes and practice probably 2 times harder than I did over and over again to get to where I am today.
Chelsea said it previously, humble is a description that you want to be as a catcher. It's not about you. The notice, praise, and adulation goes to the pitcher. Being that person that when your shortstop makes a 2-run error, you're the first one there to talk to her. You call a timeout, go to the mound, bring them all in together, and, hey, you're fine. This next one's coming to you. You're going to make this play. Being that team leader, it just builds credence throughout your team that everyone looks to you, even though you're not going to get the praise and the glory. And the second part of it is understand for the coaches that your catchers need the work. Now, I'm not talking about setting up the jugs machine at 70 miles an hour and spike balls and beat the crud out of your catcher to block. Understand the wear and tear on their arms, so when you're running first and thirds, you're not having your catcher throw 50 balls down. Blocking balls in the dirt, use incredible balls, use the softer balls so it doesn't the pain aspect isn't as great and reinforce the flinches that you're trying to get away from, because it hurts. Think along those lines about protecting your catcher a little bit. But Chelsea said it best: being humble, not making it about you, making it about the well-being of the other 8 girls or boys on the field with you and making them feel like they're the reason that they won. Again, we're the offensive linemen. The quarterback and the running back get all the praise and glory. You're just a grunt up front, and that's kind of what we are.
Well said. Well, Mike and Chelsea, it's been an honor to have you on the Hot Corner podcast with us. Hopefully these parents and athletes and coaches picked up 1 or 2 things from you two and where you've been and how you got there. And again, it's been a privilege to talk to you both.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for your time. We'll talk to you guys again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. What a great 45 minutes talking catching and life with Chelsea and Mike, 2 of the greats It was a privilege and honor to have them on our show. And our quick win this week, we're going to talk humility. Chelsea made a great point about humility, and that's what we believe separates the best from the rest.
Absolutely. So when you think of humility, think about it in the sense of thinking less of, it doesn't mean that you're thinking less of yourself. It means you're thinking of yourself less. And everyone wins when you help your teammates get better. And humility is the number one ingredient for helping your teammates get better. So when you think about a quick win from this episode, think about humility. It's the secret sauce that separates the best from the rest. And that's what's going to help players, coaches, and parents all help each of their athletes, take their game to the next level.
This episode was powered by Easton. The hottest bat in the game just got hotter with the Ghost Advanced. Check it out.
And we'd love for you to hit the subscribe button for this podcast if you like what you heard. So hit subscribe so the new episodes get delivered to whatever podcast player that you prefer. And we'd also love for you to follow us on social media. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is @hotcorner_pod, POD. So you can hit us up over there to send us some topics, send us questions, really just anything, feedback, anything that we can use to help this podcast be something that's meaningful and makes your life better.
So thank you, Cole, our Hot Corner producer, Easton, for supporting us and the MSP staff. And also a big thank you to you, the listener. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. So until next time, remember that we are better together, and we'll talk to you next week.